Slovakia's government has approved a plan to give Ukraine its fleet of Soviet-era MiG-29 fighter jets. Now, this move comes in the wake of Poland's move yesterday to provide Ukraine with fighter jets. Now, these MiG fighters from both countries could arrive by the end of the month and are answers to Ukrainian President Zelensky's pleas to the U.S.
and its allies to help provide a much-needed boost to Ukraine's air power. So here to provide analysis if more air power could be on the way for Ukraine from the U.S. or other allies. We're joined now by Jim Townsend, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for NATO Policy and now an adjunct senior fellow at the Center for New American Security. As always, thank you so much for joining us today. President Zelensky is getting what he's been asking for in regards to these jets. Is this the start providing Ukraine with significant air force, or is this just going to be a one-shot deal?
Well, I hope it's the start. You know, this is when we, the Allies provided tanks a few weeks ago, at least when that process began. It started off this way, where the British were the first to provide some tanks, and then Germany finally fell in line, the United States, and it led to now a cascade where there's a number of Leopard 2 tanks going to Ukraine. And hopefully what Poland has done and Slovakia has done will begin to have the same kind of impact about providing fighter aircraft to Ukraine. Let's hope that's what happens.
Yeah, and Jim, so how much pressure does Poland's decision put on the U.S.? Does the United Kingdom, Germany, the U.S., do we all need to follow suit now?
Well, what's interesting is the Brits have already said that they're not going to put off the table aircraft, that they're willing to go that route. And the French have said the same thing. And there's some training going on, I think, in the UK to get the Ukrainian pilots used to a Western type of platform. So if you consider those two nations along with Poland and Slovakia, that's a pretty good momentum beginning to set up. For the United States, it's a little bit different because the aircraft that Poland and Slovakia are providing are former Soviet aircraft. Ukraine is used to that. For the U.S., it's F-16s, and that's a very different aircraft with some different considerations to take into account.
So can you talk a little bit more about the current state of Ukraine's Air Force, or at least what we know of it? One Ukrainian minister told the BBC that Ukraine needs these jets to strengthen the current air defense system. What do we know about what they're working with now?
Well, it's a very interesting question. There was expectations last year that the Ukrainian Air Force was not going to stay airborne very long against the Russians. And in fact, it was the opposite. The Ukrainian Air Force, in fact, is still largely intact. They're doing missions, although they're doing it very carefully so they don't lose many aircraft. But the Russians have not used their air power over Ukraine the way we thought would happen. So this actually gives us an opportunity to strengthen what Ukraine has. If they're going to have an offensive in the spring, they're going to need this air cover. Also, the Ukraine Air Force needs spare parts. And some of these MiGs are not operational coming out of Slovakia. But that means that they can be used for spares. So this would be a very good beginning movement to strengthen that Ukraine Air Force for offensives later this spring.
And we know that China's President Xi is heading to Russia next week to meet with Putin, and Russia is already short on ammunition, we learned. So what concerns do you have about this meeting and what it means for the U.S. and Ukraine?
Well, I think we're all watching carefully to see what comes out of this when they meet the press, or however they might handle the end of their meeting. If China announces lethal weapons going from China to Russia, that'll be a big deal. The West will have to respond to that. Obviously, Ukraine will, but that will be a significant escalation if China says that it's going to provide more than a lot of the non-lethal things that they have been doing recently. If suddenly it's aircraft or it's some type of air defense system, something along those lines, that is significant, and we're all holding our breath to see what the results of this meeting is going to be.
All right, Jim Townsend, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Europe and NATO Policy. Thank you, as always, for joining us this morning. Appreciate you getting up early with us.
You're welcome.